You better be able to do something like this if you want to have a long and strong lifting career. For training programs, meal plans, and coaching, make sure you check out Khpfitness and training.com. What's going on, my fitness seekers all over the world? Khpfitness here, and I got another video for you. And today, I want to talk about an anti-aging exercise that I learned about maybe a couple years ago when I had issues with my knee after my knee surgery. There's just some things that go on that we don't take care of, and they get worse over time if we don't address them. And bring someone that you might be familiar with. Her name is Zuska Like, and I've been watching her for a long time. She's an OG. I actually haven't seen her content in some times, but she had a really good video that actually went pretty viral, and I wanted to talk about that video as well because it's so true what she says. But before I get into this reaction video, you know what I want. Oh yes, you know what I want. Go ahead and hit that like, comment, subscribe, share this with your friends. Hit the thanks if you support the channel, and let's get on into it.
Deep squat is the most fundamental body weight and mobility exercise with profound anti-aging benefits.
Now, what does she mean when she says anti-aging? When she says anti-aging, it's the same thing I say about when it comes to training. Like literally, training can help benefit you for life well into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. The oldest client I trained was in her 70s, and being able to have her get into a squat position, doing hip movements and stuff, really helps lubricate the joints and keep that mobility. That is the anti-aging part of it, what she's talking about.
And truth to be told, it's not even an exercise. Deep squat is a normal human resting position, and this is something that people in India, Asia, and people in the less industrialized parts of the world understand very well.
This is so true. I remember going to places like Makoto's, like these very traditional looking places. What I would see there is sometimes when they were waiting at the tables, they would have it in a low position. In America, we're not used to sitting in that low position. Our knees essentially start to feel uncomfortable. It's because we're not used to going through that full range of motion. But a lot of these countries, less industrial countries, actually stay in these positions to eat. And if you've noticed over the time, they age well into their 70s, 80s, 90s years old, and they're able to have full range of motion. Full range of motion is a huge thing when it comes to your health.
The United States and Europe tend to look at the deep squat as an advanced exercise, and that's because most adults in these countries are unable to get in and out of this position without struggle.
30s, 40s, or even late 20s have a problem with things like the deep squat, and they do look at it as an advanced movement. Anything that people can't do with relative ease and such is considered an advanced movement, especially in the US. But in the other countries, this is just light work. This is something that is a necessity to keep their bodies moving and to keep their independence.
Losing the ability to get in and out of this position has nothing to do with aging. You simply don't lose your ability to do a deep squat because you're too old. You're too old because you stop getting in and out of this position.
It goes back to that old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. Your muscle will only stay if it's being utilized and stimulated. Atrophy happens over time, and ladies especially. There's a certain percentage of bone density that ladies lose, especially because they don't have the heightened testosterone that men have. And what happens with that is if you start to lose your bone density from not stimulating the muscles and having that osteoblast, which actually rebuilds muscle, osteoclast happens, which makes your muscles very brittle, and it'll break you down over time. So it's very important to do things like resistance training in some way, shape, form, or fashion. That's not just walking down the road, actually getting your entire body into it. It's very, very freaking important, man.
We're obviously very fortunate to have comfortable chairs and couches and regular toilets, but the downfall of that is that we don't get to do a lot of squatting in our daily activities unless we exercise.
We stay in a position when it comes down to how our legs are we barely, if anything, we don't even go parallel a lot of times. A lot of times that we're staying above this. I see most people squat, they're here. They're not even parallel with their squat, which will give you some stimulation, but it does not help the knees, which will prolong the irritation, prolong and make it become chronic pain over time. You have to be able to go beyond that. It's the same thing. Take our arms. Nobody goes like this with their arms completely stretched out and come up here only. If you did, you'd be missing all this range of motion. So why do we do it with our knees? Because we feel a little bit discomfort, and when discomfort comes, instead of addressing it, we pull back on the movement. And that is the wrong attitude to take, guys.
Children are by design able to rest in this position as well as get in and out of it. But what happens when you stop using your ability to get in and out of the deep squat is that the muscles, the tendons and the ligaments lose some of the elasticity and your joints become stiff.
See it all the time, even as you're young. You don't see it when you're a baby. Of course, we forget a lot. But when it comes to kids, I would see KJ in this position picking things up all the time, deep squatting. And I said, boy, that boy has a hell of a squat. And I had to start thinking that maybe I need to keep that squat too. And I've always had a pretty ATG, ass to grass squat, but I never really hung in that position. I would get there and just shoot out immediately, which kind of gets away from that benefit of strengthening those muscles in the downward portion. And this is why so many people have issues with their hip mobility and such too, is we just get so stiff. We get so put in a certain position, and when we don't move past that, great disadvantages happen to us.
This results in a limited range of motion, which then becomes a deeper issue, because when I get in and out of this deep squat, I put my joints through the full range of motion, which means that I get an even distribution of pressure on my joints. But if all you do is just a half squat or getting in and out of a chair, you never get to use the full range of motion, then your joints will wear out much faster, because there is way too much pressure on that part of the joint, that small part of the joint that is being used, and the rest of the joint's range becomes rusty. And that's exactly what then causes all kinds of chronic pain and degenerative joint diseases.
Goes right back to what I was saying in the beginning. If you go from here to here only, then all of the other tendons don't need they don't need to be used, right? So it's the same thing when people are doing halfway partial reps and such, which can be beneficial for muscle because it will isolate and make the muscle denser. But the full range, the minute you get past that, or you're doing a move that requires more of that, you can actually tear your tendons, you can tear the ligaments, you can just, because it's not used to that range of motion. So you hit all of this pressure, especially with the bros who overlift. They get all this pressure, and then next thing you know, they're snapping out their knees. Why? Because when they were in a regular squat, they were doing it parallel or above, and then they had to compete, and then next thing you know, it's too much for the knees. They can't take that tremendous weight. Boom, snaps them up.
And according to statistics, countries in which people use the deep squat as their resting position, they spend a lot of time in this position, then these countries have the lowest incidence of osteoarthritis.
In these countries, they have not just the lowest chronic disease when it comes to arthritis, they also have the lowest mortality. The biggest reason why a lot of elderly people pass away is because they fall and they have no one to help them out. That's a huge thing. They're screaming, a lot of them live alone, or their nurse is not there full time, and then next thing you know, they fall because they thought they were independent, but their mind was independent, but their body can no longer be independent anymore. If you allow your hips and your glutes to get out of whack and your knees, then next thing you know, you're a product of that falling. That's why I'm so big about working clients throughout the full range of motion, doing hip days, doing therapy days, and just really getting them to move their joints because it's needed.
So squatting deep does not hurt your joints. It doesn't cause arthritis. It protects you from it. And the other thing to remember is that unless you tore a cartilage in your knee, or unless you have some other mechanical knee disorder, doing a lot of strength training for your legs and doing a lot of deep squatting will eliminate most causes of knee pain, because most knee pain results from the lack of strength in the muscles that support and surround the knee. But unfortunately, most people respond to knee pain by doing less strengthening exercises and less squatting, which of course then makes the problem worse.
Guilty. I'm guilty of this. When I tore my ACL back in 2017 and I was rehabbing back, you get so set in the mindset of fear that fear is plaguing you now. So you're like, man, what if I go too far? What if I go too deep? I have a client dealing with that now. I had another client, shoulder injury, tried to avoid it altogether. I was like, no, let's take you through it. You're going to heal 2 to 3 times faster. My doctor, when I went and got my ACL tear, even before I rehabbed it, I was able to rebuild my knee. And he was like, the reason that you were able to rebuild your knee so easily compared to everybody else is because all of the resistance training you did before that, hydrotherapy, getting into the pool, that really helped. And then staying on the rehab regimen for 6 months or more. I kept it up for 6 months straight, did not miss a day, because I know I had clients to train. And the worst thing I wanted to do is let my clients down from not being able to move correctly. I got to practice what I preach. If I'm putting you through the pain, then I need to put myself through the pain as well. I want to thank Zuka Light for this information, but I have one more part for you that I want to show you of movements that I do in the morning that really help me out when it comes down to it. All right, so here's my morning routine, and this is what I do to keep as much elasticity in my knees as possible with those deep squats, just like Zuka Light was talking about. Just moving through the motions. I usually like to sway the hips back and forth, getting a full stretch. Here I'm down on my heels. I go up on my heels to perform the up and down, coming in and out of the movement, and I am in a closer position when it comes to this movement, touching my knees to the ground, bringing them back up to make sure I have that full range of motion, back on down into the deep squat, and showing you different positions or so when I'm just changing positions and challenging myself to stay in these positions, flattening down on my feet to have that ankle mobility as well, sitting onto it to get the full stretch. And then for this position, I go into a light leg extension, aka Nordic curl leg extension. So a reverse leg extension here, just to test out the mobility of the legs, building up the quads in the midst of that. Really good moves. This is I got from the knees over toes guy. And I'm gonna make a later video about that too. But going over the knees, phenomenal. Makes your knees feel so much better. This is one I actually got from Zuka on her channel, where she's going into the position where she's going all the way down and flexing up. You can feel that throughout the moves when you do it. This one as well, I actually got from her channel and implemented and incorporated it into my routine right here. Getting down to the elbows. You see the ankles coming up a little bit, but I'll work on that over time, as like you will do. And this is for my people who aren't as flexible in those areas to be able to get the full range of motion. My older clients as well, or heavier set clients to get that full TRX. And I have a band version as well that I'll probably show in a later video to make sure you're getting that full stretch. But this really helps. Awesome moves. Deep squatting all day is what we do around here. 3 different variations. You're saying what I did there. Close, far, on the tippy toes to get that full stretch. So if you need any help, I have training programs. I have meal plans. Hit me up at Khpfitnessandtraining.com. Consultations if you're just looking for some guidance, accountability. I'm here for you, man. Just let me know. I'll be around. Other than that, you guys take it easy. Keep pushing. Stay pro-choice on it when it comes to the band training. I'll talk to you guys soon.